Welcome to PR Done and Dunner. Our guest today has a fascinating background that combines work as a casting director with executive presentation and performance coaching. She's cast over 50 films, 5 TV series, 300 commercials, many plays, pilot presentations, and various new media projects. Our guest also works with executives at large, well-known companies, nonprofits, and also tech startups, bringing their authentic voice to the role for presentations and interviews. Please welcome Brette Goldstein, a fellow New Yorker who I met about 2 years ago through a mutual friend, Jeffrey Coppell. Big shout out to Jeff. Great to have you on, Brette. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you, Bob?
I am doing great, thank you. And it has been way too long, so I'm glad you agreed to come on the podcast. And I thought the kind of things we discussed before would make a great topic for this podcast. And just to set the stage a little bit, as you know, Brette, we've helped hundreds of PR clients over the years. I wish I could say they all exuded confidence, charisma, and leadership. Things obviously that can serve you well, whether you're presenting at a conference, whether you're handling a media interview. Now, of course, we provide some level of media training, but that's generally more about the art of answering questions or maybe even not answering questions, bridging to key messages rather than your style or your personality. So I think it's a great question. Can these things be improved upon or learned, these kind of skills? Now, I know your answer, but before we get too far deep into the topic, can you please share with the audience a little bit more about your background to give some context?
My background, sure, absolutely. So I've been casting for 25 years. And the thing that I love most about casting, and the thing that I'm most passionate about, are helping actors achieve their dreams and also really identify who they themselves are and the stories that they were put on earth to tell. You hear actors all the time. I mean, there's lots of, you hear like authenticity and vulnerability and like there's buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
And one of those things that actors say all the time is, I'm a storyteller. Okay, cool. I see that on everybody's website bio. What stories are you meant to tell? And often this is the shit you're talking about in therapy. So like, let's get into that. And I think it's this wonderful combination of archetype, like that comfort food, that thing that we feel in our cells, combined with like their special sauce, what makes them a goddamn unicorn. Like I feel like being able to identify it and name it. And then because most of what I do is on camera, I'm able to do it one-on-one with them and alone before we get like the big executive producer machers in the room. I have to be seen and not heard. So that's the part that I love. And that's what I bring to the coaching.
Exactly. How did you get into the coaching? Is that unusual to combine those two backgrounds? To me, I've never heard of it or seen anybody does that. But how did you get into the performance coaching side?
I followed my joy, really. I mean, I noticed, especially after all these years, that a few things remained consistent. First of all, producers drive me up the goddamn wall. So I knew what got on my nerves. And directors, I don't geek out on that. Like, fine, okay, you're there. Also, on camera, directors are not all that good at directing actors most of the time. No. So what I loved was, again, being that intimacy of being one-on-one with an actor and saying, I just want to help you book and I want to help you achieve your dreams, because honestly, most of these people are not in it for the money. The money's actually pretty bad. And once you've been around for a little while, you realize that. So you might as well have the experience and get to tell those stories that you're meant to tell. So because I was doing so much directing in the room, because in the end, I look good when the directors are happy with their select sling.
Of course.
I carry that into coaching. And that is my favorite part of my job. So in addition to coaching executives, doing presentation coaching and media training, I'm still working with actors and doing a lot of self-tape coaching, because now no one's in the room except for theater. Everyone's doing self-tape. So they feel like they're doing this in a vacuum.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you explain it that way. It seems like, first glance, two very different worlds. Was it hard to get into the coaching side of it, to get clients there and to?
No, well, I would be happy if I got to spend 1 week out of every month living in a fancy hotel, doing presentation coaching and media training at conferences. So that's going to be a harder client base for me to build because it's not my fan base, for lack of a better word. Actors are much easier because they know me. So what's great, though, is that the recommendations have been going well because it's mostly all word of mouth anyway. So I don't know anyone else that does what I do. So I come from a really unique perspective because I can identify pretty much anyone's star qualities, that comfort food and special sauce. And I can help people get out of their own way so they can let their charisma emerge. Because here's my theory with actors. This is, and I will fight anyone on this. Okay. As far as modern acting style is concerned, which is very different than when we grew up, unless the actual project is a period piece or a biopic or something that's very languagey or that lives in a world. Like I would even count like Shonda Rhimes stuff, a lot of her stuff, like nobody talks like that. So unless it's one of those three aforementioned categories, what audiences are so smart and we are such good bullshit detectors. And so what we're looking for is we don't want to ever not believe the actor. We want to believe you 100% of the time. So it's about getting out of your own way and seeing all of, for example, the Bobisms. Like I want to see your given approach to a set of circumstances and all of those little micro expressions and behaviors and physical, all the things that you do and the way that your defense mechanisms, the way that you get through life. And that is enough. So this is the other part that I love about all this coaching is that it's great therapy because in the end, like, I am reminding you why I celebrate you and want to watch you on a screen, whether it's in an interview or a presentation or see you on a stage, because everyone has that.
That was my next question. Have you ever met somebody who said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. There's nothing there. There's no special sauce there. There's nothing to work with. Everybody.
No. Well, every person I've ever met, even the ones that are like somewhere in the C-suite of a tech startup that are just nerds, like everyone I've ever met has that charisma and has something that draws me to them. And I think that will draw most people to them. Here's where I recently worked with an organization that brought a bunch of tech firms together, a bunch of startups from Asia. And I was really aware of cultural differences. Also the fact that I talk way too fast. Remind myself to breathe low and slow. And I want to talk about breath too in this. And I know
reflexive techniques. Is this what you call reflexive techniques? Kind of act like, follow style, follow speed of the person you're speaking with. I don't know. I've heard of that anyway. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well, I call it shut the fuck up. I feel like what was happening was like, I was just like, because I was all excited and passionate. And they were like, and I
were they intimidated?
No, I think they were having fun for maybe the 50% of it that they got. But I also learned because I wanted to know what I could do better the next time around. And I learned from one of the people involved who was raised in America, but currently living in Taiwan, and he's Taiwanese. He said, this is a very polite culture. So if they're not hearing you fully or they don't get it, they're actually probably not going to say, wait, honey, what are you talking about? So because of that, of course, they also don't sound like Jews on the Upper West Side. I don't know what are you talking about? So like, they're not going to do it. So he said, I think that some of it went over their head. I guess my point is this. I came up against, I understand, I hear you, Brett, and then doing it the same way again. So they were actually still remaining in their own way. And I didn't have the way, well, some of them, but I would say with 50%, I thought, I have to explore this more. I'm way into cultural differences, especially with the casting. But how, especially when English is maybe a third or fourth language, how do I know I'm getting my message across? So that's a challenge I just had to deal with recently, and that's good.
I would imagine that adds another level of complexity to what you're doing. I assume, was it in English that you were speaking with them? Or we have a client who's Chinese, is why I'm asking. They don't really speak English, so we need a translator, which adds even a whole new layer of complexity, I'd imagine, if they don't.
I'm going to try a new thing next time. So, I only speak English. So I was speaking to them in English. We had no translator, but I think what I'd want to do next time, and I really feel strongly about this, that this is going to work, is that I want to hear them do their presentations in their native language, even if I don't understand it, because I'm realizing I've done that when casting commercials. And it's really, and I can feel it. It helps to have two parents that were Juilliard musicians. Like
wow. I didn't know that.
Feel it, and I have enough, I play the oboe for years and I sing. And so I have enough of a background where I can feel that in my body, where I'm wondering if we can actually work, even in a language I don't speak, if that's going to get us closer to the goal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, yeah. I would open up a whole new world to you. I mean, but I'm sure there's plenty of potential business here as well. So I think in doing what you're doing, again, it makes kind of intuitive sense. On the other hand, some might have a hard time understanding it or believing that it works. I mean, we're familiar with the cliches, just act the part, think like a leader, dress for success. On the other hand, some say, you have to be your authentic self and people really can't change. So I don't know, what would you say to those kind of statements? Maybe it would help by breaking down how it actually works. How does it work? I'm assuming it's through some kind of seminar or workshop. What is your process?
Well, let's talk about presentations, and I would even loop media training into this.
Okay.
That you kind of want to start, you want to start with the end in mind. So you want to think about your audience's key takeaways. And one of the things I think that happens with speakers, whether it's one-on-one in an interview or whether you're on stage in front of 1,000 people, is that everyone kind of gets up in their own head, and then there's imposter syndrome and there's nerves and there's a whole bunch of mishigas that goes on. Okay. I get it. Think about, I would say to an actor, think about your scene partner who's often a reader in the room. So in this case, think about your audience. Yeah. What are the pain points? Who are you talking to? And why are you telling them this? Because, for example, I just worked with a big pharmaceutical company for a launch of a new drug at a national sales meeting.
Okay.
And in terms of helping them create content and in their delivery, I said, you're sitting there talking to a bunch of sales reps. I mean, you've got like global leadership there. Great. This is not for the reps. What can they walk away with from your presentation that makes their life easier? Especially because they have to sit down with rheumatologists. And I know a thing or two about that. They don't know picnics. So what do you do? Like the way that you talk to them, the points that need to be stressed, even just the tone in which you deliver. How do they need to hear it? What do they need to hear? And then you really just stay present with them.
But is it for a one-off presentation, or is this something that you can take through to multiple types of presentations? Because you might have different audiences, you might have different, goals. One day you might be doing a presentation, another day you might be doing, a press interview. So presumably or hopefully some of these skills can help you with both kinds of activities, right?
Both, right? Who are you talking to? Why are you telling them this? The key pain points of your audience. Going back in the case of a media interview, I think to your story, your vision, your mission, even if you need to pivot, thinking about what is your elevator pitch and also the narrative, and you rehearse it ahead of time so that you don't overtalk and underbreathe. Yeah. One thing that I noticed too with this recent group I was talking about is there needed to be more personal stories and personal stories about them, personal stories about someone that's used the product or service and benefited from it, more about their why, more real life examples. There was so much tech talk. And I thought, the audience is going to space out. Speaking of spacing out, audiences space out all the time. You think about the fight you had with your husband or or when you pick up your kid from school, and did you coordinate that? To that end, no one is sitting around waiting for you to fuck up. No one.
Right.
And they're only going to retain a certain percentage of what you say anyway. That's why it's so important to get it down to those key takeaways and think about how to deliver your message so that they'll hear you. And human beings respond to humanity. So I notice a lot of people have a lot of resistance to even telling their own story or talking about their own personal connection.
Right.
And I'm not going to overshare, but I think people want to see human beings, especially in media interviews, but even on a stage.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. What about, I know there's some things we had discussed. I mean, what about the importance of archetypes, I guess you've mentioned, or picking someone you admire to channel their energy?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I feel like if you're going to go old school on me, I would say I'm more character actor than leading lady. But for a lot of people, they want to channel a leading man or a leading lady, especially if leaning into their humor doesn't make them so comfortable. So with that, the energy is back and down. It's low and slow. It's being comfortable in the silences, which is really good for a media interview because they can also edit you.
Yes. Definitely. And that's sometimes it's a game they play. If they shut up, you'll talk more,
Right. And even like one of the reasons why I'm wearing this schmata right here is because
it's a lovely top. It's not a schmata.
Thank you. I want to feel, even if it's this much, like Robin Wright. That's what I want to feel like. So I want to channel her energy because she's the opposite of me. And so other than being a white lady, she's the opposite of me in so many ways. She's a regal presence that feels very comfortable sitting in a very queen-like energy. She's a quintessential leading lady, powerful, comfortable in her silences, lets people come to her, where I tend to be more of like, a puppy.
Yeah.
So George Clooney, Don Cheadle, I just thought about that, channeling that energy. The kind of go both ways, like funny, but also quirky leading ladiness of a Kristen Bell, or the charm and irreverent humor of like a Ryan Reynolds, like picking someone where you can channel them if you're thinking about a prototype or an archetype, such as the hero, the jester, the explorer, the sorcerer, the magician. I think I send you something about that too. I think that we respond to archetypes, like even with me, right? Like, okay, very like middle-aged, funny New York Jewish lady. Like the minute you hear me speak, you're like, oh, I know what she is. And that's comforting because right? And then there's other things about me. Like I love the word motherfucker and love romance comedies. That's not typical of it, but I also still carry on my Mahjong cup because still walking archetype. So like there, I think that it's a combination of that comfort food, which is the archetype, and the special sauce that really comes to life. And the fucked up part about our culture is that we don't name it. We have a tendency, like, run into some girlfriends at brunch and you say, oh, you look great. There's a lot of physical appearance talk.
Right.
Don't talk about in our culture what it is about the person that makes us fall in love with them and trust them and gravitate towards them. It's awkward. We don't have the word for it. So that's what I love doing in the coaching.
It's interesting. I mean, you've talked about some people from the world of acting. I'm thinking of in business. In fact, I was thinking of doing a blog post about how to play the bad boy for the media to get better attention. And you think immediately, like, I'm a big tennis fan, so I'm watching Wimbledon, Nick Kyrgios, who's being just nutty, but the press seem to love him, although some of them take shots. Elon Musk in tech, of course, he's kind of like the bad boy, but he generally gets pretty good press. Donald Trump, who you can argue, is he a bad boy? Is he outright evil? Probably the latter. But, you get my point. So would people say, like, I want to be this archetype? Or can they really kind of adapt an archetype that might not be, natural for them? Or to what extent do you want to try to be someone else or be different?
It's a great question. I would give the same advice to real people, as we call them in the business, like the normals. I would give the same advice to them that I give to an actor. if, for example, an actor is looking at a breakdown, like something that casting directors release and say, am I right for any of these roles? If they're looking at a character and they judge the character, or when they read the description, it doesn't resonate, like, oh yeah, that person really lives in me and there's a lot of like there, just pass on it. So I would give advice to speakers where for example, like, I mean, when I think about Bad Girl, right? Like you're talking about the bad boys. And if I think about Bad Girl, I think, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm kind of a bad girl. In what ways? Well, I'm very collusive. You don't necessarily want me on a team if I don't respect you. Like I'm a good, like little mean girl. There's a part of me that's slightly slutty. Like there's all sorts of right? Like I can do Bad Girl, but if Bad Girl didn't live in me and I was just as earnest as could be, or my values took me only in the direction of goodness and service to all the time, and no whatever. I wouldn't do it because then it would look like bullshit, and audiences can smell the bullshit from a mile away. We're very smart.
I'm sure. And you also mentioned the importance of finding your, what do you call, special sauce or secret sauce. Maybe you could talk more about that. And even see if you could start to understand the Mr. Geller.
Ooh.
Help me understand that. I don't know.
All right. So I'm gonna do you, but I'm also. Do you mind if I do one of your former podcast guests?
Please go ahead. Have at it.
Okay. So I just watched your fabulous interview with Aaron Solomon. And the first thing I thought was, oh, he's my bromance dream. And usually you're seeing younger guys do that, right? Like, oh, by the way, for any of you that haven't seen it, watch Champagne Ill. That's like my favorite thing. Have you seen that show, Bob?
No, I haven't.
It's Adam.
What's it called?
Champagne Ill.
Champagne Ill. Okay.
And it's Adam Pally and Sam Richardson, and it's freaking hilarious. And I know that bromance comedies are not very in vogue right now, but I love this stuff. So when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, I so immediately see him as like a kid growing up in a neighborhood and being like the sporty guy with his friends, like running around in the 70s or 80s, like, and with the hat and his relaxed confidence.
The actor there? Who are we talking about?
I'm talking about your guest. I'm talking about
Aaron Solomon?
Yeah. Like the way that he sits back in the chair and the charm and the masculinity of even the name of the company, Esquire, and the playfulness. It's like he's so intelligent, but also so laid back and charismatic and playful. He always looks amused. But what's great is that you're never the butt of the joke. He's just amused because he's kind of watching it all. It makes sense why he gets cast a lot to talk about things on the television.
Yeah, he's just very solid. It's great.
Yeah. He knows his stuff. He's like a big macher and he knows it. He's got like New York City or whatever through the window. And he's honest and straightforward, but doesn't overshare and doesn't overtalk. And he really knows his shit, but he's handling it all in a really fun, playful way with a great sense of humor. And you know what it's like to party with that guy or something. And that's the thing. It's like, it's often hard for us to know what it is that makes others fall in love with us. Really listen when people tell you and take it in. Because I think in our country too, especially women, we have a tendency to be, and be self-deprecating or not be able to take
of course.
So I think special sauce is it's those things about you that really pop, and a lot of it will be archetypal. Like when I saw him, even in the hat and like and the shirt and the office that he was in, I was like, oh, I know who that guy is. I know who that boy is. I get it. And like, that's good. And then there's stuff about him that makes him unique too. We don't want to all be complete. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's not how television works.
But there must be some inborn traits there. Like, I can't be Aaron Solomon. I mean, there's no way. He's just so natural. He's so good at this stuff. I don't know how much was learned or how much he just, Oh,
but why would you want to? Because let me tell you about you, Bob. Okay. Like, why would you want to be? You've got a whole other thing going on. So to me, even when I first talked to you, however long ago that was, I thought, oh, he's fabulous because this is a guy with like a nerdy background and a big, big brain who also is like the quintessential introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert. Like he can swing both ways in that way. He can truly connect with someone like me, but actually he probably really needs to refuel on his own. You also have this wonderful, first of all, I love your dry humor. You have this.
Somebody.
Like you are, you tell it like it is. I also even love how you swear in your writing. Like you tell it like it is without making it about you and oversharing. Because part of what makes you pop to me is that you are an adult in the room who would probably be like, oh, honey, I am not an adult in the room, but okay, keep going. Who has who has an innate curiosity about people, places, and things that is not childlike, but that is genuine. Like you are genuinely fucking curious. And I love that. I also love, again, that you have, there's nerdy fascinations, and it makes sense that you come from an engineering background, but also you are actually, I would think, a pop culture enthusiast as well. So that's cool. You also are very left and right brain balanced. And that is probably what makes you so good at what you do. So you're a storyteller that can also run a motherfucking business. So like you're an artist, you are a writer, you have to do something creative or you'll die, but also you can get your shit together like a Capricorn. You're a practical storyteller. And you're a seeker with true human appreciation. Now, I can't say all those things necessarily about Aaron. You also have like a Maryland-y, like definitely East Coast, but you got like a Maryland-y, like middle of the East Coast warmth with like, it's no joke that you went to BU for a few years because you've also got like the New England-y intelligence that we would expect from a Boston person, where I am right now, actually, and my sister. So
well, you are.
Is that on the money?
Brett, I think we can stop here because it's not going to get any better. No, I'm kidding. So those wonderful things. Thank you for saying all those nice things. I guess the natural question is, though, because sometimes people say I'm a little low key or low energy, or how would somebody like me turn it on or turn it up for the media or for presentations, or should I even try or not try?
No, I wouldn't. No, because I remember, and really think about what you're seeing on television. Like really think about that shit. Okay. I remember I was working for a director who's actually the only director that I've ever worked with that really knows how to direct actors, Adam Reed, who's now actually working on a project with Ron Howard and Kristen Bell.
Wow.
I was doing a promo for a show on VH1 that somehow featured some guy in like a little Speedo situation who was baking cookies or whatever. And this is like really early in the commercial part of my career. And he said, Brett, do not let any of these people go over the top. You want their performance to be like this big, and that's what's going to make it funny. And because I come from a theater background and because of my personality, I was like, you sure? Can we at least do like one take where it's little and one take where it's big? Because it seems like and he was like, no, you don't get big. You do not get big. And you need to trust me. And this is now 15, 20 years ago. And I saw, and I was like, oh, he's right. I think that we as a culture really respond to low key. It makes us lean in. Especially when like what is coming out of your mouth when it does is amazing and awesome. And no, I would not want you to turn it up. I would just want you to think about what you need your audience to hear. Think about being of service to them.
Right. Well, I know many of our clients can benefit from your coaching and others in the PR field. And maybe you can just help us understand again what's involved as far as how it works, logistics, that kind of thing.
So with presentation coaching, usually it works. Usually a company will bring me in and I'll work with people either in person or over Zoom, one-on-one, and we just set a schedule for that. I think there's never enough time, but I'll do what I can with the time that I'm given. And then if there's a conference or something where where there's an on-site of it all. I generally go on site so that I can work with them during the tech rehearsals. And then if it's Zoom, that's easy. But I do believe, well, especially because all of my coaching with actors is on Zoom, and I'm used to seeing everyone in a medium close-up. Right. I should be a better medium close-up, actually. Oh, that was one thing I thought about you too on one of your interviews. Like you were like a little, like you were down, and there was San Francisco in the background, and I was like, no, like claim that frame, like get in it. So, yeah, we need.
Can I tell you I'm a lousy podcaster? Anyway.
No, you're great. You're great.
Thanks.
So so it'll be one-on-one. Often then I'll be on site. And with media training, it's usually I'm either going somewhere or working with someone in person or preparing them over Zoom. But again, I think that a lot of people, especially now that we're back in the room, I think that a lot of people don't think we can do this really well in a medium close-up virtually. We can. I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's highly tailored and probably better one-on-one. Is that true, or is it typically done in groups?
I like one-on-one better. Yeah. I've definitely done group workshops, but you know what it is? Okay. Because I'm a casting director, I think I'm so results oriented that I'm like, look, give me the real deal. What are we working on? And let's get you ready for that and prepare it so that you shine. So I can go into the theoretical of let's do a thing and then we'll have a workshop around it, like just general presentation skills. And I can do it. And what I do, I do a workshop where people just basically tell a story about an experience from their lives. And then I point out their special sauce. And that's good to know. And I love doing it. But I really enjoy when there's something tangible. Like I got an interview on CNN and I'm freaking out. Or I remember working with one woman a couple of years ago where she was like, I'm going to be on Fox. And I'm freaking out. And I don't quite know. And then I was like, all right, well, let's drill into who your host is. What's going to happen here? What are the possible gotcha moments? Who your audience is? Thinking about who your audience is. What is it that they actually will allow? Will they let themselves hear? I mean, that was actually a lot of fun. So it's because with an interview, it's interesting because you're thinking about not only your viewer audience, but who are you actually talking to in that room?
Good point.
And be really well prepared, as if you were preparing for a director, a showrunner, an executive producer. Who is that person? And how do you need to navigate that in terms of tone, feel, expectations both ways, that sort of thing.
Right. But outside the specific opportunity in which you happen to do who you're speaking with, who you'll be speaking with, the topic, is it possible to take an executive who's a very smart person, CEO at a startup, say, who's just very flat in interviews and not interesting, not dynamic, and, get them to improve their style so that they're a little bit more interesting for the media? And how long would it take to accomplish that, do you think?
Oh, I could do that in an hour with somebody, 100%.
Do they need to practice? Or do they need to, can people really change after 1 hour to that degree? I mean, it's great if they can.
Most of the people that I've seen can, but okay, one thing that I think a lot of people, it's a fun story to tell yourself, especially if you'd like to not work, is that there's this, if I rehearse and I practice, not only will it freak me out, also I will sound rehearsed. I can help people make discoveries in the moment sound fresh. I think it's really, and people probably don't want to hear this, but it is real. When you see a TED Talk, they have practiced. It sounds like a lot of those good speakers, but it's not. They've rehearsed hours and hours and hours. Actors are the same way. A lot of them are like, look, we're going to do a bunch of takes on set anyway. I'm just going to show up. I don't want to over prepare. But the really strong ones really put in the work. And I think, actors are different because they see themselves on tape all the time. People in the real world do not. I would 100%, unless they're an influencer or something, I would 100% recommend rehearsing, practicing, especially if you have questions in advance from an interviewer and you want to be concise and you need to be careful around editing. Also, you need to know how when, where you do and do not breathe. You need to be able to rehearse your story. I would think you're very good at storytelling and work with people on that, right? Like, you got to breathe. You got to rehearse your story. You got to know your story. You need to practice listening for a lot of people. You also need to know what you need to prepare right before, like even with breathing, right? I'll give you an example. There are some people who benefit from like the alternate nostril breathing, like for a few rounds. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's really interesting. Yeah, that'll really ground them. Some people from 4-7-8 breathing. Some people get really freaked out by 4-7-8 breathing because it requires a hold. Some people 5.5, 5.5. For me, if I can remember low and slow, where it's everything, I can throw it down into my diaphragm and just slow everything down. And it's me, but you have to know what works for you. And yeah, and just even physicality, the like being comfortable in your own skin, knowing what clothes, even your shoes, especially for women, bring out certain qualities in you. Like you might wear the right pair of shoes and be able to channel George Clooney way better because like you're in the shoes that make you feel sexy and charismatic in that way. If you don't practice and play around and try various iterations of all these things, how would you know? So I think that you can practice being charismatic and present, especially with a coach of trust.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, here's a question. Have you ever brought anybody from the corporate side to the acting side or vice versa?
Oh, yeah.
That does? That happens?
Yeah. I well, also that makes me look.
Because I'm available. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, good. Well, hey, yeah. No, I do. I've definitely done it before. And I'll just say, like, if you can get out of the road, not get wound up. Yeah. I mean, I don't deal much with the writing end of things, but I've absolutely brought people from one side to the other. And I love it when that happens, because often when you meet someone on the corporate side, where I get that gut feeling of, holy shit, they should read for this film or this whatever I'm doing. It's already in them. Like on some, like their inner child wanted to be an actor, and mom and dad at the time were like, oh, hell no, if you want college paid for, that's not going to happen. So like it's there, or they're huge like TV junkies anyway. Like they're usually delighted by the opportunity. I think that another problem here in this country is our creativity is not encouraged enough. So I like practical creativity, like because I am also left and right brain balanced. Like, yeah, no, okay, good. Be creative, do a movie. It's great. And now that people can create their own content with their iPhones, there's a lot of opportunity to have fun with that too and see yourself on camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whole new content world that must open up a lot of opportunity for you, I'd imagine. Films, TV, there's so much. It just seems like there's a never-ending appetite for content.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or do you think we're at a good place?
I want to go through just 6 things.
Please.
The old school, I'll talk about it with actors first. The old school, a lot of the old school method, including the method, right? Of like, oh, I'm gonna do heroin for a week and see how that goes because that's my character or whatever.
That's method acting, right?
Method acting. Okay. There's an old school style to acting that I realized recently with a coaching client who's an actor, where like the actor would write out subtext on every line and a whole bunch of bullshit that just put them up in their head. I say, if you can answer 6 questions and then let it go, and then again, unless it's like a biopic where like you really have to play Jackie O or whatever, or a period piece or something really character or stylized, you bring your own voice in the given circumstances to the role. If you can answer 6 questions, you're good. And I would say that for actors, and I would say that also for people who are doing an interview or a presentation. First, objective. That's the what do you want? And that could often be the call to action or the key takeaways that you need your audience to hear. 2, the relationship. If you're doing an interview, you have 2 different relationships here. You have your audience, and then you have the person that's actually giving you the interview, because I think they can be dialed into them, right? And with actors, same thing. What's the relationship with the characters in the scene? Number 3, where are you in space and time? Now a studio is a studio, but you want to think about when your audience might be seeing you, especially if it's a network and it's being aired in real time, right? That all of those little nuances. If you're on a stage, are you the first person after lunch? Are you the first, are you maybe the third person in so the caffeine is kicked in? Like, where are you in space and time? Also, is this a breakout room where you might have 100 people versus the 600 that were in the ballroom? So it has a little bit more of an intimate feel there, a little bit more conversational rather than presentational. So where are you in space and time? Number 4, how do you want your audience to actually feel? And I would say this with commercial acting, especially, and I would say this with presentations and media interviews. You want them to feel like you have a solution to their problem and you're making their life easier. So it could be something else, but that's a good place to start for a lot of what I've seen. Because sometimes there's something more interesting than to inform, which is a little dry. And I think, sometimes people lean into the I'm going to give you a whole bunch of facts and figures so that you look smart and you're informed. Okay. But also, sure, is there another way to go? Can we yes and that? Number 5, in the case of an actor, to really understand what genre you're in. So I would say that for presenters and people doing an interview, you want to know the medium, for example, the network, the tone, who the interviewer is, how they often conduct interviews, and how can you get ahead of that? How do they cut these things in terms of the editing? So you really want to understand the world that you're in. And then that would be one of them. And then the next one is why you? Why did they choose you to give the interview? There's the obvious choice of, well, I run the thing, I'm a CEO. But there's also the why does the audience want to not change the channel? So that's your special sauce. What is it about you that you can lean into? So there's a bit of channeling like the Robin Wright or the George Clooney or the Don Cheadle or Viola Davis or whomever. Right. But mostly it's, okay, so let's say in your case, well, I don't know, I think I'm a little too low key sometimes. I mean, if that was part of, okay, well, great. How do we make that work for us in a way that makes the audience love us the way that our best friends love us? So it's thinking about the why you of it all and just letting that emerge and then really listening as well, especially if it's interactive in some way, like an interview. So those would be the 6 steps that I would say can take.
They sound like great questions. I guess, what do you do with it though? I mean, just in asking and answering those questions, do you think it'll automatically put you into better?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And because with both acting and interviews and presentations, if you're 14 steps ahead and in your head, we know that you're in your head. We feel it. And presence, being truly present, and charisma go hand in hand. It's like, I can say this as a woman, right? It's like there's nothing like being with a beautiful man who makes you feel like the most beautiful woman in the room and nothing else exists. It probably feels the same way for you, where like someone is fully dialed into you, and that's presence. So you answer the 6 questions and then leave it at the door because you know it in your body.
That makes sense.
And then in your body.
Yeah, because I was thinking that might be a lot to remember, and that's beside the things we would tell them, such as your key messages and bridging to your messages, which is some of these things that you obviously have to remember and easily be able to summon when you're having an interview or pivot, depending on the direction of the interview. So,
yes, this is the stuff you take, you do your homework, you leave it at the door. That's the stuff that needs to stay top of mind. The key takeaways, the call to action, the points you need to hit. Like, where do you need to circle back to if things go awry? Or and that goes back to the most important, who are you talking to and why are you telling them this? But yeah, no, I'm all for getting out of your head as much as possible or leaving the bare minimum in there that you need to have, like as if you memorized a presentation or those key points. And we really often, for most interviews and presentations, as the audience, we're not going to be able to take away more than 3.
Yeah, good point.
Not that smart.
No, we talk about that's exactly right. We talk about having 3 key messages. That's exactly right. And if there's too many messages, it's just too much information. It's hard for you to remember. It's hard for them to remember. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on, Brette. This has been great. I am going to include your information in the show notes so people know how to get a hold of you. I'm confident that there are many out there who can use your services, and I'll share this with our team and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks again. Have a great weekend. Take care.
You too.